We've got Alexander Holmgren in Marylebone, Westminster, via the website that says, quote, Brian for mayor, keep it up. You're a huge inspiration and are very motivational to many of us. We stand by your side on May 6th. Fingers crossed, rock on. Thank you, Alexander. I really appreciate you so much for that. We've got Landry in Islington that says, quote, what policies will you put in place to help entrepreneurs who have suffered from lockdowns? It's a great question, Landry. My lead policy as your next mayor of London is to get London back to work. We have to find a safe and secure way to get this city functioning again. When you strengthen the economy, you strengthen all things. You strengthen tax revenues, you strengthen our health system, you strengthen our transport system. There are safe ways to get this city back to work. Entrepreneurs need a roadmap out of this. Our government's not delivering on that, and that's one of the main things I will do as your next mayor of London. And again, there's more detailed policies on my website. Thank you very much. I appreciate that comment. I've got Carolyn here in Bromley via the website that says, quote, what do you propose to do to get our young people back into education? Hospitality, which Carol is in, and retail have been severely affected by these lockdowns. Will you open this up as soon as you become mayor to help our economy back on track? Will you open up care homes so our elderly and loved ones can feel love from their families again? I would also like to understand what your proportionate response to this pandemic will be, unquote. Carolyn, I appreciate hard questions. That's why I'm here. Let me talk about some of those. First of all, hospitality sector has been demolished by this lockdown, even though there only represents 3% of COVID transmissions. That doesn't make sense. These venues know how to keep your food safe. They followed all the protocols, and yet they get shut down first. We have to find a way for them to get back in business, our restaurants and our pubs and our cafes. I've talked about focus protection. And because of my show, London Real, that's been going on for 10 years, I've hosted over 1,000 conversations. We've got 500 million views of our programs. I got to sit down with Dr. Martin Kulldorff of Harvard Medical School. He's one of the authors of the Great Barrington Declaration, and he has a theory and a concept of focused protection, where we protect those elderly and vulnerable to this virus, but we get those that are healthy and safe back into work. If you look at the COVID deaths, only 1% of the 70-some, 80-some thousand recorded deaths are actually from people under 50 that are healthy, like me. The majority of death is for those that are elderly or that also have other ailments. So we need to protect those people, and that might mean still restricting some visits in the care homes, Carolyn, until we find out exactly what's going on. But we've got to get the rest of the country back to work, or we're going to have nothing to educate our children with. We're going to have nothing to propel our NHS. We've got to really make hard decisions now, and I believe it's cost versus benefit. The lockdown is actually costing us much, much more than benefit. We just can't see those numbers up front. One professor at Bristol University has said over 500,000 lives are being lost right now just because of the lockdown, because of the economic damage, and we need a leader that's willing to have those hard conversations, and I am willing to do that. So thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate that. A couple other comments, and I want to keep going with this broadcast. We got Mohib Jaffrey in Hertzmere via the website says, quote, what are your views on the handling of the pandemic? Again, I've talked briefly. I think we can find a safe way to get London back to work. This is about cost versus benefit, and it's about prevention rather than cure. We've got to really think about how we can invest in our health now to make sure that we don't become unhealthy and therefore have a higher chance of getting damaged by this virus. But no one's really talking about investing in our health. Again, I think we can find safe ways to get our economy back working. I think we're doing more damage than good right now with this blanket lockdown. We need a proportionate response to the virus. Unfortunately, our politicians, all they have is a hammer, so everything looks like a nail. And they have this blunt instrument, and they're just locking everything down. And it's causing, I think, much more cost than it is with the benefit. So a couple other questions coming in here. I've got Luke Big in Kent that says, Brian, we regularly make family trips to London for family days out. In December, we did an annual Christmas trip. However, the congestion charge was nearly $20 to drive into central London. This is before parking, which was another $25 to $45. This becomes very expensive. And Luke, I totally understand where you're coming from, which is why my policy of Get London Back to Work involves two major initiatives. The first is a congestion charge holiday post-lockdown, which means we zero out the congestion charge. Now look, I know we need less cars in London. I have green initiatives, and I'm very sensitive about the environment, but we've got to get our entrepreneurs back. We've got to get our businesses back, which means we need traffic and footfall back in central London. It's so crucial. So for 6 months, no congestion charge, so we can get people back in central London and safely spending money and doing what they love to do. The next thing I want is a 6 months business rates holiday post-lockdown, which means we allow businesses to get back and employ people and start commerce without having that taxation from the government that I know hurts businesses. I've spent 30 years in the private sector. I've worked in automotive, in aerospace, in finance, on Wall Street and in the City of London. I've worked in tech startup as the CFO. I've worked in new media with my 10-year London Real company and YouTube channel, and I've worked in digital education. I know what it takes to get business back. Our current mayor of London has never run a business in his life. He doesn't understand the challenges. And let's be honest, London exists because it was a center of commerce. Thousands of years ago, this place was occupied by the Romans and the Saxons and the Vikings. This was always a place of business. We have to remember that first. Everything else comes from that. A couple other questions here. I've got Muhammad Ali from Lambeth. First of all, thank you for having us here, Muhammad. I appreciate you. And he says, quote, I would like you to visit Brixton. Brixton is deemed to be one of the worst places to live in the UK and is a hotspot for knife crime. I want to see you speak to these people. And he says, in parentheses, in my opinion, the real people, as they have gone through a lot of struggles. If you can get these people to back you, it would help your image as well as your cause. From watching some of your videos, I can tell you might be better than most others. And if you manage to get the position of being the mayor of the capital and talk to the people with full transparency and stop lying or not answer certain questions, that may make the government look bad and you will have made the people of London and the nation proud. Good luck. Muhammad, I appreciate you. And honestly, that's the first time I've ever read your question, and that's what we're all about here, transparency. I am streaming live, answering your questions, going around to your boroughs, talking about your issues. When was the last time you saw a politician do that? Never. When was the last time you saw the current mayor do that? Never, because they like to be protected. They don't really want to deal with the problems. When I'm the next mayor of London, I'll be doing these broadcasts on a regular basis. I'll be talking to you on social media. I'll be answering these questions. I'll be finding out your challenges, and we're going to solve these problems together. I appreciate you, Muhammad, and I'm going to come to Brixton. I've spent a lot of time in Brixton. I love the culture of Brixton. But the truth is this. The mayor is not doing enough to fight knife crime. He's not doing enough to invest in the communities and to give our young children other options, including entrepreneurship. And the problem is all he does is blame the government. All he does is try to pass the buck. He doesn't come up with solutions. The same with lockdown. Leaders should bring us solutions, don't you think? They should solve problems. They should educate us. All the current mayor does is use fear as a weapon, and I don't think that's the way you lead a city, and I'm going to do something different. Last question here from Sharon Baker in Lambeth says, Brian, what is your position on 60 plus and over 60s Oyster cards? Will you reinstate their use before 9:30? I think we need to freeze fares for the elderly, freeze fares for the disabled. The mayor promised to do that in 2016, and yet 4 weeks later he raised fares. I don't think this is acceptable. We've got to give these people option for transport. We've also got to make sure that the TfL doesn't go bankrupt yet again like it has on our current mayor's watch. I've got a whole plan for transport. It's detailed on my website. Please go there. We've got solutions, and I appreciate your comment.